One can do a quick overview of the book of Leviticus just by looking at the different sections of the book, which are pretty clearly demarcated. There are early chapters that have to do with the sacrifices, the sacrificial procedures, distribution of sacrificial food, and so on. Several chapters about the priestly ordination, several chapters about impurity and rules for purification that culminates with the Day of Atonement in chapter 16, right at the center of the book. And then the latter part of the book is dealing with life in the land. It moves away from the sanctuary to living in a holy life in the land. So there's a pretty obvious subdivisions in the book of Leviticus. One way to read the book is to see it as a liturgical progression. If you think about the movement that I've just described, it's talking about the way you approach God and the effects of approaching God. That's what Leviticus is about. So how do you approach God? Well, you grab an animal and you do the sacrificial procedures that are outlined in the first part of the book. In order to do that, though, you need a priest. And so you go to the priestly section of the book, and there's a priest that assists you in offering the sacrifice and actually does the work on the altar, sprinkles the blood, and does all the other work of offering the sacrifice. The priest is going to make sure that you're clean, which is the topic of the next section of Leviticus. So the first half of Leviticus is about sanctuary access, and sanctuary access through sacrifice that's ministered and mediated by the priest. But once you've gone into the Lord's presence, the book isn't over. That's not the telos of the book, as it were. That's the hinge of the book. The reason why you go into the presence of the Lord is so that you can go out. And the second half of the book deals with life in the land. So when you go into the presence of the Lord properly, you receive His gifts, you enjoy His presence, you rejoice in His presence, and that is the formative experience that leads to holy life in the land. You can also read the book of Leviticus as a kind of recapitulation, a complicated recapitulation of the early chapters of Genesis. The tabernacle, which is described in the latter part of the book of Exodus, is set up that's assumed at the time the Leviticus is revealed. So you have the tabernacle, which is a new creation and also a new Eden. You've established a new garden. To have a new Eden, you need new Adams. And so the priests, Aaron and his sons, are ordained as the new Adams who are caretaking the garden. They're serving the garden, they're guarding the garden, just as Adam was called to do. The impurity laws in Leviticus 11 through 15 follow very closely, as we'll see in a future video, follow very closely the curses of Genesis 3. So they assume the fall. And then the latter part of the book moves out of Genesis 1 through 3, creation, Eden, the fall, and into the land. And we have laws that have to do, the Genesis background of those laws is the conflict between Cain and Abel, and brother-brother conflict in the land rather than idolatry in the sanctuary. So you can read Leviticus in these various ways. It's a liturgical progression which includes the liturgy flows out into life in the land. You can read it also as a recapitulation of the book of Genesis, which is making the same movements in the presence of God, and then you move out of the presence of God in the garden out to have dominion over the world.